Clerk, we are reporting out a closed session with 3 items. First item, 4.1. Town Square fundraising campaign update.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, 3 items of council reporting of closed session. The motion for the first item is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner, any comments, questions? Seeing none, recorded vote. This is Town Square. Yes.
Recorded vote has been requested for the first item of council reporting on a closed session. Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes yes. Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Kim is absent. Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. Second item, property matters, 672-684 Henderson Drive.
Second item of council reporting out of closed session. The motion is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Gardner, second Councillor Gilliland. Any comments, questions? Recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested for the second item of council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gallo votes no. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim is absent. Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes yes. And Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. The motion carries.
Third item, 4.3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The third item of council reporting out of closed session is to receive the report and that the January 22nd council closed session minutes be adopted as circulated.
Mover seconder. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, comments, questions? Recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested for the third item of council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Gardner, how do you vote? Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes no. Councillor Kim is absent. And Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes no. The motion carries 4-2.
Confirmed by law. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gardner, Councillor Weiss, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Clerk, ready to go for the next one? All right. Clerk, time is 7:03. I'm going to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? We have just some additional items. Councillor Gardner, second. Councillor Thompson. Any comments, questions on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations, no delegations. Consent agenda, nothing. So I'm going to move to advisory committee meeting minutes. Would anyone like any of those pull? Otherwise, if I can get a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes. It's a mouthful. Councillor Gardner, seconder. Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Council. This is our first committee of the whole meeting. I did send out an email asking, I will be asking if anyone would like to pull any items. Otherwise, we will approve the items in each of the agenda. So are there any items that anyone wants pulled on the agenda? Councillor Thompson.
I'd like the active transportation master plan pulled.
Thank you.
Item 14.1.
14.1. Thank you. Councillor Gardner. Everything. Okay. Okay. 11.1. 2024 development. Oh, sorry, 11.1, statement of remuneration expenses for members of council committees and local boards. It's just to receive for information. Would someone like to move that? That's pretty good. I didn't realize I can get my voice to carry that far. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Gilliland, any comments, questions on this item? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If anybody from the public, not many people watch the meetings, but if anybody from the public would like to see what council receives and what council spends, they can look at this finance and information report.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'll vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 11.2. This one's the 2024 Development Charge Study and Bylaw Final Approval. Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Gallo, seconder. Councillor Gilliland, comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I was briefing this report and I noticed, I'm trying to find the page, and sorry, because it's a really long document. There was some language there that alluded to the fact that phase one, or the short term of the active transportation plan, if approved tonight, would qualify for the development charges for cost recovery through you, Mr. Mayor, to, I'm not so sure who, is that Ms. T Camp or is that Mr. Ramuno?
Mr. Ramuno,
Sorry.
did you get that? Sorry. Oh, I'm going to go to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Mr. Ramuno was not paying attention. I'm going to throw you under the bus, Mr. Ramuno. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the projects that would be encompassed within the active transportation plan are covered within the DC study. So the DC study looks at the requirements over a 10-year period. So there are some that would reflect a post-period benefit. So that'd be outside the overall study period. So it would impact future years. There's also a consideration for some of the projects that are included in the active transportation are a benefit to the existing community. So those projects would not be fully paid for through DCs. They would also have to be paid through an alternate source, such as a tax funded reserve. And they're roughly in around between 50 and 60% DC funded, and the balance considered benefit to existing.
Councillor?
Great. I just wanted a little bit of clarity on that, because it is good news after looking at the active transportation plan. Obviously, it's very costly, and it's good to know that we can recoup some of those costs. So I was happy to see that. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I have had feedback from residents about the lighting at some of these intersections. So is that something that would be a safety and possibly an accessibility issue? Is that something we could look at as well?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how this relates to the DC study, or is this more to the active transportation
Yes,
plan
you're
that'll
right.
come later?
So I think
Right,
that's,
and
we're getting to that in a bit, Councillor.
Thank you. Could you yes, I think that's all I have then.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions to this item? I'll vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Administration Committee Agenda 12.1, policy to address copyright of altering town images. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, is there a seconder? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gardner?
Could you just go into a little more detail? If a member of council wants to use any of the logos, but wants to I don't know, change the color or change something, is pardon? The graphics, thank you. Are we allowed to do that? Is this for staff, the public, council? Everybody?
Smith?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think you're asking a question about a logo and then about graphics. So I'll address the logo first. So our logo is trademarked. So you cannot change any aspect of the logo, and that's for legal. So we do have a trademark logo both with and without the tagline. We have our brand guidelines document, which outlines the colors that can be used. And those are our brand colors. So also the colors, there's colors you can and cannot use with the logo, different background colors that you can use and not use. So the use of the logo is very scripted in terms of how you can use it and what colors you can use it with and without. What backgrounds you can use it with, for example, that's very prescriptive. In terms of our graphics, I wouldn't say you can manipulate the graphics, but in terms of altering the graphics, altering is a gray area. So in the age of social media, we see altering of graphics everywhere. People will share our graphics or share our content and do things like put overlays on top, put things called stickers or GIFs, or every different platform calls it something different, but it's just something, maybe a little animated feature or an overlay with sparkles. Many people have made GIFs of themselves. I saw it was talking to Councillor Weiss. We saw one where a comedian he overlaid himself on the venue's poster on the social media sharing of that post. And he was pointing to the venue saying, come out and join me. And the venue shared it. So there's many different ways that people can overlay or alter a graphic and share that on social media. There's also something called green screening on TikTok, where you put a graphic or a video or an image behind you and you can speak in front of that. So in my opinion, all of those ways that people are altering graphics would be considered altering graphics. And for me and our communications team and in consultation with legal, unless some of that altering is doing damage to reputation, causing misrepresentation, doing any sort of damage to our brand, I would consider it fair use and actually encourage it, because it's sharing our content and getting it in front of another audience. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor?
That certainly did. And what would we do if we found that there was an infringement of this? Is that illegal? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to
Sarah?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. If there was an infringement of our logo, typically the Legal Services Division, we send a cease and desist letter to the person who is infringing and asking them to no longer be using the logo. In the past few occasions that we have done it, we have received immediate compliance and they've stopped using it. In terms of altering the graphics, as Ms. Smith has suggested, we really wouldn't do anything unless it affected our brand. And if we did that, we'd have to look into what we could do, because copyright law is a bit more of a specific area. And so we'd have to see what we could actually do in terms of any negative infringements.
Councillor?
thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss?
Thank you. And on that same vein, we have graphics and others that go out to our communities and beyond. And I've seen circumstances where other people's logos have been moved, changed in order to reposition a graphic or a picture of something. Are we in a circumstance where our sponsors may be annoyed with us vis-a-vis eliminating a logo, placing it in a different spot than they agreed to, changing the size or the shape of it, because they all have brand standards as well as we do. So how do we manage that? Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to date, I have not come across that. I haven't had a complaint from any of our sponsors or seen that myself. I think it would be, if you see it happening, hopefully you bring it to my attention and I can reach out to whoever's sharing that content. And if they are manipulating one of our partners' graphic or logos or one of our logos, that's included in the graphic, I'd probably reach out to them. But to date, I have not come across that.
Councillor?
So we just funnel it through you if we feel that there's an error being made somewhere, and you'll manage it from the corporate side. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mrs. Smith. Carly, looking through the brand guidelines in the report, it certainly addresses a lot of the questions around the Town of Aurora logo, but we have two other logos that we're utilizing. One we've used for the Armory and one we've used for Town Square. So how come neither of those logos are in the brand guidelines? Have we not copyrighted them, or are we in the process of doing so? Because certainly with the Town Square logo, we foresee utilizing that more and more. And I thought that that would be a good thing to include in the brand guidelines to provide that clarity and direction around it.
Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. I am actually in the process right now of working with Robin and her team to develop just such guides. So some guides around our other assets like the Town Square.
Councillor?
So then going back to the Armory, now it's been a few years since that logo was rolled out. Are we not using that logo anymore, or what is happening with the Armory logo?
Smith?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that. I don't do any of the creative for the Armory per se.
Mr. Sale?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we hadn't actually considered the Armory. We still do use the logo, as does Niagara College. So we should certainly get that included in the collection of assets. So we'd have the museum, the Armory, Town Square, all of those that need to be the brand guide needs to be come up with for those three.
Perfect. As long as now through this process, which is great that it's been brought to the forefront, we revisit some of the ones we've used in the past, ensure to incorporate them, because I think it's important to maintain those brand guidelines, specifically what is and what isn't allowed. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on some of the brand guidelines for you, Mr. Mayor, too. Sorry, your last name again, Smith, sorry. I guess my concern is when it comes to other partners and sponsors, do we have anything within our policy that at least states when we have agreements with our sponsors that there's consequences? And like you said, reach out to you and let you know, but at the same time, there should be something in our policy that triggers to say, you shall not, modify our partners' logos either, something to that effect, because I think they need to be protected. Otherwise, if it's just kind of a free for all, I'm certain that, people who are partnering with the town or making an investment or sponsoring want to ensure that those protections are in place. So is that language in the policy somewhere when it's dealing with other people's logos?
Ms. Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So to date, in my time here, and then I've consulted with Patricia, who's been here since 2016, we haven't had any complaints about our partner logos being manipulated on our materials. I can certainly add that to the brand guidelines. It's a living document. We update it frequently, so I can add that language. But to date, it has not come across my desk that a partner is upset with the placement or the manipulation of their logo on our materials.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'd like to see it added. I did come across one piece of, I guess, advertisement that did occur, but there was no complaint made internally formally to the town. It just leaves it kind of open. And I just think that we just have some protections in place by stating that this is something we prefer not to happen. So I just think that's a good thing to have. I also noticed there was some crests and seals and stuff. And I was like, oh, these are really cool looking. Because we had so many different versions. So through Mr. Chair to Ms. Smith, is there a way, can other members of council utilize the Town of Aurora crest if they want to, if they were sending out a formal letter of any sorts, could they utilize that?
Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is in the policy, the actual brand standards policy, under procedures, there is an outline of when the coat of arms and the crest can be used. So I would, depending on the material you're talking about, I would default to our policy that states when and where it can be used. It's mostly for correspondence from the mayor or official recognitions or certificates, for example. And it's quite limited in its use, to be the more formal of our logos. So it's quite limited. We don't use it very often.
Mhm.
But when we do, we just follow the procedure that's laid out in the policy.
Councillor?
Thank you. So just as an example, so I've been asked a couple times to formally send some pins because they wanted me to do that. And it's nice when you send a nice letter along. And if I were able to send a letter and say, thank you very much for meeting, blah, 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 and send some of our Aurora pins, if that's what they wanted, is that an appropriate use that we could put as looks like an official letter from our office of council, I guess. I don't know.
Smith?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we do have our official letterhead as well. So I would, in that case, I would just default to the prepared letterhead that we
Okay.
have with our branding
Okay.
on it.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Planning and Development Services Committee Agenda 14.1, Active Transportation Master Plan Draft Report Presentation. Someone like to move the recommendation? Oh. Well, I'll take that and let the presentation go. I'll get a motion on the floor. Someone like to move it, and then we'll do the presentation, and then we can speak to both the presentation. Councillor Gallo, seconder? Councillor Thompson? Okay, do a presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Dave McLaughlin with WSP. I'm the principal of WSP and leader of our team who put this together with you, and I'm also a proud resident of the town of Aurora. I'd like to walk you through an overview of the presentation of the new draft ATMP that's up for your consideration today for information. Hopefully I will get this right. Okay, why an active transportation master plan? Lays out the vision for a community that can better support all forms of active transportation. It builds upon objectives from the town's key policies and plans, including your current OP, the strategic plan, the master transportation study, and the trails master plan, and other guiding documents that we reviewed as part of the study. It's key to building upon Aurora's very successful existing trail system, sidewalk system, and it's a focus for sort of a multimodal strategy with an emphasis, in this case, of a little bit more attention to cycling as well. Some of the objectives of the Active Transportation Master Plan that are in the report and you see before you, to provide and support a variety of transportation options. So it's a multimodal strategy that works and builds upon your master transportation study to support community health, improve connectivity for residents, both to go to and from for recreational purposes and to travel to destination, shopping, the library, rec facilities, things like that, to increase and improve sustainability in the town, and to prioritize safety and accessibility, and to coordinate existing and future infrastructure projects. So having a plan in place is a great way to achieve economies of scale when you go in to, for example, resurface a road and you need to remark the road. If that road is part of the AT system, there may be an opportunity to, for example, paint out and add cycling infrastructure at the same time, since you're already replacing the pavement markings. The study process went through a multi-step process. We did a background and technical review. We did a detailed existing conditions analysis. We went through a network development process that adopted the guidance in OTM Book 18, which is Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18, published by MTO, that provides an approach for network development, planning, and facility selection for municipalities in Ontario. And we developed an implementation strategy that includes short and long-term costing, both for network and programming elements of the plan. And then we drafted the master plan in a form that we think incorporates sort of a series of really good recommendations for this town and to guide it over the next 20 years. So some of the documents that we looked at, this is just a sample, your trails master plan, the master transportation study in the middle with the blue spruce is the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18. We looked at a number of other documents In terms of planning design guidelines, your official plan, we looked at York Region's Transportation Master Plan, as well as the guidance that they have in their official plan. Just a few things that we, early on in the study, we looked at socioeconomic trends for the town. As you can see, representing 12% growth since 2016. Projected population based on the most current information we had, that's also captured in UOP. We looked at transportation trends. Approximately 60% of Aurora's population commutes to work, which isn't a big surprise, I don't think. And 22% spend under 15 minutes, with 21% or more spending 15 to 30 minutes on the commute. The modal split for Aurora is 85%, 87% driving, 7% transit use, and 5% walking and cycling. And some of those trips include link trips. So people, who may be driving, parking at the GO station, or walking and cycling, and then taking transit for the rest of their trip. We had an extensive consultation engagement program over the course of the study. We had a pop-up at the Aurora's Farmers Market. We had, through Engage Aurora, an online webpage where we posted information over the course of the study. We had a mapping activity where residents were given the opportunity to go online at their leisure, mark up the maps and give us their comments. And we had an online survey. I think over 500 people went to this site and reviewed it, and a number of them completed the online survey and provided valuable feedback. We also had a series of meetings with the Active Transportation and Traffic Safety Committee meeting, as you can see on the slide. We met with them 4 times. And we also had a number of discussions over the course of the study with staff about the process and the approach we were taking. And we engaged them, both the recreations team, Parks and Recreation team, and the roads team over the course of the study. So how was public and stakeholder input incorporated? We enhanced the on-road cycling off-road trail network through the input that we got from residents and staff and those who contributed to the study. There were a number of recommendations about identifying desire lines, for example. The ATAC committee was very interested in us showing, similar to the Trails Master Plan, desire lines, which are, future connections that are currently on private property. But, putting that line on the map provides an opportunity in the future when those lands, or if those lands come to development, that consideration can be made in discussions with the developer that, the town's intention is to have an A2 facility of some kind. It's not intended to show the exact alignment. So in the maps where you see a desire line, it's really pretty high level and conceptual at this stage. And the details of what the alignment would look like and the facility type, whether it be a facility along a roadway or an off-road trail, would be addressed if and when those lands are developed. So what's in the ATMP? What you see before you is an outline of the chapters. We have an introduction. We talk about the Aurora context. We talk about best practices, and we provide some information on what others are doing similar to Aurora. We highlight the existing network and talk about what you have today. We go through and comment on the study, consultation, engagement, and how we included public input over the course of the study, including from the ATAC committee. We review the policy supporting AT in the town and at the provincial level, at the regional level as well. That's all incorporated so that they all work together. We developed a proposed network following the Book 18 methodology that I mentioned to you. That's consistent with what other municipalities are doing in Ontario, and that we think is appropriate for the scale of the town of Aurora. We also developed an education and encouragement strategy, and I'm going to talk about all of that, and an implementation plan that's detailed, that's costed, that provides specific information on phasing and includes a database that is a part of the final deliverable that staff can use in the future as they make decisions on an annual basis with council's approval on implementation. So the existing network is about 280 kilometers, about 18.3 kilometers of multi-use paths. So those are the kind of facilities that you would have in the boulevard of a roadway. 61 kilometers of trails. So the trails are off-road, outside road corridors and parks and green space, and 200, just over 200 kilometers of sidewalks. This is existing sidewalk network in purple that you see in the background, showing the network that, and we updated this based on the most current information available provided by the town. It also builds upon the extensive work that was done as part of the master transportation study that had only been done a few years ago. We reviewed that detailed work that looked at sidewalks and sidewalk missing links, and even had a phasing strategy. We reviewed it, confirmed it, added a few more recommendations to it, but it was well done and is in line with the approach that we would have recommended to the town as well. This is existing trail and a multi-use pathway network on this map, again, showing the off-road trail connections and the multi-use paths, which are, keep going. The next one is the existing cycling network that, you have a cycling network that's mostly multi-use trails and multi-use paths, but a few kilometers of bike lanes and signed routes and paved shoulders, just about 97 kilometers in total when you include regional facilities. The existing cycling network, again, on-road facilities that you see on this network. There was a lot of mapping involved, a lot of field work, investigating what you have on the ground and trying to identify connectivity options. So the network development process that I mentioned that builds upon Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18 is this 8-step process where we identified existing conditions and routes that have been proposed in the past planning documents. For example, there was some recommendations in the master transportation study. We looked at candidate routes based on the approach and input that we had from the public and the expertise of our team and members of the ATAC committee. We went out in the field and reviewed them. We verified them with town staff. We had an additional round of consultation engagement with stakeholders, including the ATAC committee. And we put together a draft network and then went through an iterative process, including a workshop with the ATAC committee that talked about the facility types, also incorporated their input on phasing and their view of priorities. And then we costed the network. So the route selection criteria are based on what you see on the screen: safety and accessibility, connected and continuous, making sure they're feasible and practical, support multimodal trends, connects and expands upon your existing trail system, and connections to green space. The Book 18 methodology, the step process we followed is what you see on the screen now. 3 steps, basically pre-selecting facility types, investigating them, inventorying the site conditions, which is basically going out in field work, measuring things to make sure that we're proposing a bike lane or a multi-use pathway. Is there sufficient width in the road right of way? What's involved in implementation? Is it going to impact utilities that currently exist? And what is the appropriate facility type given the context and that location in the town? The types of facility types you see on the screen: sidewalks and bike lanes, signed routes, paved shoulders, multi-use paths, separated bike lanes or cycle tracks that could be either separated by a painted buffer or physically separated and can be on the road or behind the curb and in the boulevard, and then multi-use trails. The proposed cycling network is based on most of what was in the master transportation study, as well as information identified by staff and identified by the team in looking at a few missing links, but it was pretty current, to be honest with you. So it was great to build upon that study that was only done a few years ago. The proposed trail multi-use trail network that you see on the screen, again, we met with Parks and Recreation team. We actually updated the trails plan in terms of existing that was done out of the 2011 Trails Master Plan, and met with staff and worked with staff to identify their current thinking about future trails, as well as the timing and phasing of those trails. They also shared some information about costing that they had for trails that are already in the design approval process, and that was incorporated in the costing for the study as well. The proposed cycling network builds upon the multi-use trail system, the in-boulevard pathway system, takes into account things like where are all the key destinations, where are the schools, especially the high schools, how can we best connect the town through a network. Focus is trying to cross major arterials at signalized intersections, for example, and it really provides a comprehensive network that I think serves all the key destinations, but also really connects to the Aurora GO station as a center point and all the key REX facilities in the town. So when you look at the facility types, you may remember that we had 97 kilometers of bikeways and just around 200 kilometers of pedestrian facilities. The network is now proposing just under 500 kilometers, 33 kilometers of bike lanes, the proposed length would be just around 30, sign routes just over 30, paved shoulders, multi-use paths on a number of roads, separated bike lanes, about 7.5 kilometers, another 35.5 of multi-use trails based on input from staff, and really, building upon the really successful trail system that we have. The desire lines, I mentioned that to you before, about 24 kilometers in areas that might be developed in the future that are currently under private ownership. Sidewalks, another 33 kilometers. And then it takes into account the regional on-road cycling network, as well as per their current TMP, but it doesn't cost those. The proposed network phasing is grouped into 2 phases, short term, which is 0 to 10 years, and longer term, which is 11 to 20 years and possibly beyond. It looks at low investments initially for quick wins, such as, revisiting road widths, lane widths, adding assigned bike routes, conventional buffered bike lanes, or physically separated facilities along roadways where you already have the curb to curb width and you have the corridor width. So there's no proposals for widening road right of ways as part of the implementation strategy. It completes gaps in the trail system and on-road network. The sidewalks that were identified and phased are based again on the master transportation study. All the phasing and details by road are in the appendix to the master plan as well for the sidewalks. And it includes segments that are formed from previously proposed capital road resurfacing projects. It's important to try to build upon economies of scale so that if you have a capital plan in place or doing improvements in the next 3 or 4 years, and those are also identified to have the AT facility, it's ideal to try to incorporate implementation at the same time because it's the most cost-effective approach. The long term is something that would be revisited next time you update the master plan, but it requires routes that have additional investigation or environmental studies. Some of them are longer term. Sidewalks that were identified as low priority in the master transportation plan were identified in this category as well. And segments that should be implemented when a roadway undergoes full reconstruction. And in most cases, that'll be well beyond 10 years based on the town's current capital plan. So the trail multi-use network phasing is what you see here on the screen, with dash blue being short-term and the dash red being long-term for the town. And if I go to the next one, you'll see the phasing for the cycling network. Same similar approach, dash blue for short-term and dash red for long-term. And the short-term really tries to focus on connecting schools where possible. There's a lot of focus on connectivity and crossings through signalized intersections to really connect a well and better connected network for people in the first 10 years, and also to provide strong connections to the GO station as well. In terms of priority projects, on-road cycling, there's Earl Stewart Drive, bike lanes on Edward, Murray Drive, again, bike lanes to connect really big missing links in the town's network and to accommodate kids and others who are cycling. On the off-road trail network, there's the Addison Hall Trail and the Shining Hill Developments Trail that are already in development in some form. And then on sidewalks and multi-use paths, there's a Young Street multi-use path that's being proposed from, I guess, Bloomington up to the rail bridge over Young, and the Edward Street sidewalk that I believe is already in the town's capital plan has been costed. So how much is this investment for the town. From a network perspective, it's not insignificant, but it is very much in line with what other municipalities are doing, whether you're looking at Georgina or East Gwillimbury, Richmond Hill, or Markham are bigger and larger. It's a multi-year strategy, as you can imagine. It is a significant number, but like I said, some of the costs associated with implementing on-road facilities can be accommodated as part of capital works projects when you're going in and resurfacing or rehabbing those roads, that you time the improvements at that time, which would reduce the costs that we're identifying here. These costs also include design and contingency, and they're based on unit prices, meaning, you know, it's typically a per meter type of cost, depending on the nature of the project. And prior to implementation, staff would typically do a design study, and they'd be able to confirm cost at that time. These unit prices we used are based on the most current unit prices and construction prices we have for Ontario, based on similar projects, including those in Southern Ontario. And costing for programming, we're recommending 10,000 a year to support education encouragement programs, 10,000 a year to support infrastructure like bike racks, to invest in bike racks and work to install those throughout the municipality. And also somewhere between 500 and 750,000 to do a separate study. So there are a number of grade separations that are identified in the plan, but they're not costed because they're quite complex. And there are a lot of issues that would need to be investigated at each of those locations to honestly come up with a reasonable cost estimate that, you know, that we could put in a plan like this. So the recommendation is that the town consider undertaking a feasibility study, and they can, and, you know, staff can recommend and council consider how many of those grade separations that are identified in the plan they'd like to investigate now. A number of them in the plan include crossings of the rail corridor. And given the future plans for the rail corridor, both the double tracking and the electrification, that does have huge impact on the feasibility of the crossing and whether it's sort of a trail over corridor, or it may be even cheaper to tunnel under and install a culvert. And those are things that would be flushed out in that particular study. So the costing summary, both network and programming, is estimated in the 20-year plan based on today's dollars to be just over $57 million, of which a portion would be covered by DCs and a portion would be local benefit. So finally, I just have a few more slides. In the master plan are a series of recommendations that are also captured in each of the chapters of the master plan. I don't think I'll read through each one, but I will highlight some of them. Obviously, the first one was a recommendation to adopt the plan, that it should be reviewed on a regular basis, that the town staff work to encourage active transportation friendly with streetscaping and urban design and all the projects they do, regardless of whether or not they're on the master plan. Recognize the implementation requires coordination and funding from the town and in part by the York region. There's also opportunities to seek upper tier funding from time to time if it's a project that is a long corridor where there are transit investments, for example, or transit projects, whether it be a grade separation or something else. Typically, those types of AT costs are borne as part of that project as well and could be funded partly or all by the upper tier. That the town should identify and support local champions and cycling advocates. You have a number of them, some who contributed to this study. On the next slide, focus greater priority on implementing cycling facilities and trail facilities and sidewalks in some of the dense areas of the town as per the master plan network we've shown you. When you next update the master transportation study, and make sure this is in alignment with the most current series of Ontario traffic manuals, because they updated in recent years, both for cycling and for pedestrian infrastructure. Work with business improvement areas, York Region Transit, Metrolinx, to provide safe and secure bike parking wherever possible. That can be also with the school boards. Prioritize safe cycling and walking connections between the GOES transit station, as well as the GOES station out by the highway, are all key components. Just a couple more in terms of education. Build a culture of active transportation within the town. Promote it. Celebrate the new projects as they get implemented, so that the public is aware of it and understand how they can use it and how it's connected to the existing trail system, and use champions that we have in the community to do that, and to help. Work with program partners to develop partnerships and with a variety of different groups, as you see listed here, from police to BIAs, local businesses, and the active Transportation and Traffic Safety Committee, of course, which is a key participant. The education and program recommendations we developed and are embedded in this master plan are based on sort of a three-phase approach. So a foundational programming where some initial funding to start events and to sort of celebrate active transportation, then the development of more basic programming that could be rolled out either by the town through the recreational various programs or in partnership with York Region and Public Health and others. And then advanced programming, things like, learning how to cycle properly and what are the rules of the road for people of all ages. There are a number of programs, Can Bike is one of them, that are available, and many municipalities will tap into to offer to their residents. Phasing and costing, I already presented to you the two phasing approach, and to recommending that you adopt that. We also talked about the need to consider a pedestrian crossing treatment study. There are a number of locations in the town where, and this is based on input from the ATAC committee, but also from the public, where there could be improvements to pedestrian crossings. There's long stretches where, people are not crossing a designated intersection. So there should be a review to see whether or not there can be improvements and perhaps a higher frequency of crossing locations along some roadways to improve accessibility in the town for pedestrians. And we already talked about the grade separations. And then finally, my second last slide is maintenance. Very important as you design and implement infrastructure. At the same time, obviously, you plan and think about how you're going to maintain it. With implementing new multi-use paths on your roads or cycle tracks does come the obligation and responsibility to maintain those. And there are policy decisions that could be made by the town on year-round maintenance. Some municipalities, for example, implement cycle tracks and store snow in them, except for a spine during the winter. And as demand increases, then they ramp up maintenance and year-round. And other municipalities try to do it year-round. It really depends on the resources and the equipment they have. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, are there any comments, questions to the presentation or to the report? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just wanted to thank David and staff and the public and the committee as well for the input to this document. Very thorough and needed. I don't have any specific questions other than I believe the committee is going to have one more stab at this, taking a look at the full document at their next meeting, if I'm not mistaken, through you too. I'm not sure.
Mr. Romano?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, they do have a copy of the full document, and we've asked for their final input. May have to defer to Nancy whether we have the master plan schedule come back to the next advisory committee, but that's something we can certainly look into. We wanted to bring this forward to council just so you had an opportunity to see the plan, hear the presentation from Dave before we bring it back at a future date for your final consideration and endorsement or adoption.
Councillor?
Could I just get confirmation whether or not it will be at the next committee, the full document?
Nancy? If I can get you there.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo. So the committee was provided the full document on February 14th, I believe, to review, but we can also bring it back to the next committee as well.
Councillor?
Okay, I thought that's how we left off at the committee level because we only received kind of the highlighted version of it. We didn't get the full draft. I don't think it was ready at the time, or and I thought it was important for the committee to weigh in on the full document at the committee level. So I would recommend it comes back there and they provide input and then to council.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo. So they actually have provided input to us, and it's going to be in the April 2nd report that we provide to council with all the committee input that we've received to date.
Yeah, there's a dynamics that happens at the committee level that other than, you know, sending comments online versus, you know, in a meeting and hearing everybody's. Anyways, if it's going to be at the committee level, the full document, that's all I was interested in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss.
Thank you. I want to congratulate the committee for this work and finally bringing active transportation forward as a priority in the community for both cyclists and pedestrians. But I've got a couple of questions here, and I think they were referred to when you talked about grade separations, and we're dealing with grade separations on roads. But you were speaking specifically about grade separations vis-a-vis extending trails because Metrolinx has cut our town in two halves, and basically it's only through vehicular traffic that we can get from one side of the or on major roads. So were you referring to the underpasses and those types of things and the two spots that you have identified in the maps when you talk about grade separations? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
David.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. And there are a number of other additional grade separations that were identified that were initially recommended in I think it's the 2011 Trails Master Plan. And the TAC committee was very much interested in ensuring that those were captured in the update in this active transportation master plan. And all but one are included on this plan. There were two crossings that were very close together down by the rail bridge that crosses Young Street. And your Metrolinx had advised that there was no way they would even consider one of them, which when our network has a very simple go around that works out very well. That's also off-road that provides a connection around that location. But all the other ones across the town are in this current plan.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I see that did I hear or see it right that you said that this was in the 11 to 20 year instead of the 0 to 10 year? Is there a reason for it being a priority 10 years from now as opposed to somewhere between now and 10 years? Through you, Mayor.
David.
Through the mayor, not necessarily. The priority is to do the feasibility study, which has not yet been done, to get a better appreciation of what would be involved to design and implement some of the grade separations, given what we know about the double tracking. For example, if you're talking about the rail corridor and the electrification, which increases the height requirements for anything to go over it. So there are a few locations that were proposed in the previous plan that would require significant land in order to ramp up to get to that height. And it also raises the issue of when you get to that height, the cost of it, but also is that something that public would really be comfortable with? There may be an alternative in some locations to excavate under the rail corridor and to build a concrete culvert and have the trail flow under that in some locations. A feasibility study would be able to identify those options.
Good. I'm glad that's under consideration. The other thing has to do with your off-road multi-use trails. Many of them are gravel and natural as opposed to paved and lit and maintained, and particularly the ones I'm thinking about, and I didn't see where the differences were, but for instance, those trails that go from one part of the town to another part, particularly in for the GO station, or adjacent to and encouraging children to use them during the inclement weather that we typically have in winter. Is there any plan in here for you to consider those active transportation routes to be paved when they're now gravel, to be maintained and perhaps even lit, as we've seen in adjacent communities? Through you, Mayor.
David. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Trails Master Plan is likely going to be updated soon. And I suspect that that would be the format to look at the trail design guidance here in the town. Most of the off-road trail systems, as you know, in green parks and green space in the town are granular surface, while the trails that are in the boulevard or roadways are all asphalt, and they connect to each other. And through that connecting, they provide a really strong off-road recreational facility that people can use and not actually be on the roadway. So there are many municipalities who are, looking at whether or not they want to pave their trails. Not all do. There are a lot of different reasons. Some of the green space, and because of environmental considerations, the decision is it's best to leave it as a granular surface. There's also, having a granular surface trail also has another, I'm not sure if benefit's the right word, but it impacts who uses those trails in terms of skateboarders and other certain users. Once you make them asphalt, then you're going to have that increased activity, and it's something that has to be thought of in terms of use of those systems. I think the town already, in locations where their off-road trails have grade or drainage issues, they already have short sections that are asphalt already, which is pretty common, but is done more for drainage and mitigating erosion issues. But I would suggest that the Trails Master Plan would be the most appropriate format to investigate that and to see whether or not the town wants to consider revising their current trail design practices.
Agreed. Thank you.
Councillor?
The other thing I was really happy to see was the involvement of the education system. Back in the Activate Aurora days, we had walk to school days, and they were very successful with a walking school bus. And it's also another way to relieve congestion and danger around school areas where parents are dropping kids off and picking them up, and a variety of other things. So I think an education program is money well spent to try to do that. And I think it's important that it comes from the town as something that's really important. That's all for now. Thanks.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair I'm sorry, your name again is? David. Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Weiss asked some of my questions, but I'll just do some follow-up in response to the grade separation in response with Metrolink. I know the town of Aurora, we've already done some sort of reported back as far as some of the outlooks of what we feel would be appropriate in negotiating with Metrolinks, and had some exploration. And so I don't know if that was something that you had access to or were able to see some of the results of that. We didn't necessarily do any schematics or anything like that, but I just found that the feasibility recommendation of $500,000 to $750,000, I thought was very steep. I think we know where we want the grade separations to happen, and I think we all would like Metrolinks to play a role in helping subsidize some of that. So I don't know if I'm really in full support of that highlighted asterisk in there with falling on the town for that responsibility, because I feel that I think other people need to step up to help subsidize that. So that's my comment with that. As far as the timeline, I'm going to assume that perhaps you maybe some projects under a certain budget to align with more the regional master plan. And I say that because I know that the Wellington corridor has always been a sticking point for me, going from east to west. And that's been like really the big challenge in our town, is the great divide. And it seems to me that main corridor still is pushed back, but yet we've kind of aligned that with the region. Is that the reason why today it's in that bucket? Or to me, I would recommend that this is done sooner than later. And I would say that as an Aurora plan, I would suggest that I would want that done sooner than later, regardless of how that falls within the region. And I feel like, and Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to chime in, the region has its plan with all of the municipalities, and sometimes we little Aurora doesn't necessarily get on that priority list because everybody has something to do, and eventually ours just falls down the ladder. So this is our opportunity to say in Aurora, like, no, this is a priority for us, and we want to move this up quick sooner. And I just feel like that sends a message. I don't know if maybe you could answer that.
Through the mayor, We did engage York Region as part of this study. They did attend an ATAC committee. They left that committee with that very message, that Wellington was a very important corridor, that we thought it should be elevated in terms of York Region's priorities for improving active transportation. The input we got back following that meeting was that pending the outcome of the decision related to the GO station and the redesign of whatever that will be with Metrolinx, which is not that far off because there will be double tracking soon. But that will then guide York Region and what they can do from that point on to provide a multi-use pathway connection to the GO station for both the east and the west, to Yonge Street, and then beyond Yonge Street to Bathurst. Many years ago, I'm a resident of Aurora, you probably all knew that there actually had been a paved pathway along Wellington from Bathurst, not all the way, but coming up to Yonge. And then many years ago, when that road was redone, changes were made and that was removed. It wasn't signed as multi-use pathway, but it was absolutely used for that purpose. So I think there's an opportunity to revisit that, but that's the input that we share with York Region.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I myself had conversation with the region last term, had the conversation. I got the impression that perhaps we were at the 11, 12, 13 mark versus the top 10. And I did have some estimations on cost sharing. If that was an option, it did fall into a category of funding that I'm sure our town wasn't really just willing to spend at that time. But I think the priority between Bathurst and Yonge Street, I understand there's a lot of challenges between Yonge and the GO because it's very narrow. But at the very least, especially with development that will occur down that local corridor, it's only going to increase. I have families who say they can't walk strollers. There's nowhere to go. It's a challenge. So I would just prefer to highlight that as I feel for Aurora is a priority to be able to connect that east to west. So that's what I'm going to say there. I guess this is to the report and I might not be appropriate until afterwards. So I'm going to wait and talk to Ms. Teekamp after. Thank you.
Sir Gardner?
Through Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the slide on page 20 at paved shoulders. So it shows, I guess it's a bridge. I can't see any bicycle. I can't see that that would be safe for a bicycle.
David?
Through the mayor. Paved shoulders are a facility type that are on rural cross-section roads without curbs, similar to a bike lane. But because it's a shoulder and under the HTA shoulders, motor vehicles are allowed to pull into shoulders. So it's rare that we would sign a paved shoulder with a cycling stencil and put out a sign saying it's designated only for cyclists. There are some municipalities, Guelph being one of them, who has done that. But it's not consistent with MTO's preference in the HTA. But, cyclists really do benefit from paved shoulders on rural roads. And I'm sure if you reached out to the cycling groups, they would give you a lot of positive feedback that, typically in rural areas, there's not as many cyclists. And the paved shoulder does a number of things. It provides space for the cyclists. It also accommodates pedestrians who are walking, facing oncoming traffic on the other side. But it also has an asset management benefit to you as a municipality because by extending the partially paved shoulders out, the force that heavy vehicles transitions through more asphalt. So the cracking and alligating that you often see that starts to break up a road, it's deferred. It takes a lot longer for that to happen. So you get more value out of your investment typically.
Councillor?
Well, thank you. That's a good explanation. But if you go back to the slide, it's got, is it a bridge or just there's whatever that is? I can't imagine a pedestrian or a cyclist feeling safe walking on that. So the assumption is that there's not a lot of traffic, so they could just move onto the road. Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
David?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're talking about the paved shoulder picture that's on that slide 20,
Yes.
that's actually a guide rail that there's a drop on the road on the other
Right.
side. So that's being installed actually not because of the shoulder, not to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists, but it's a safety measure for the road to, if motor vehicles astray from the travel portion of the roadway, it's intended to keep them within the roadway and not go into the ditch and flip over. So it just happens that that picture at that location, I'm sorry, has a guide rail. But more often than not, unless there's a need for a guide rail, there would not be one there.
Thank
Councillor?
you. Thank you. Follow up through Mr. Mayor. On the same slide, it has multi-use pass. It has a lovely picture of the town of Aurora sign, and a path, and vegetation growing almost entirely over the path. So those are things that we need to watch out for. Thank you. And I don't know if, it's not something that actually fits in with this plan, but how would we ensure that, because you just couldn't, well, maybe you could ride a bicycle under it, but you'd probably be on the grass. So the other thing is, our population is aging, and I find that the lighting in some areas of sidewalks, even on Yonge Street, are a little low. And there's no, if we're talking about accessibility, I think that's something that we need to check as well. Thank you. My other questions have been asked and answered.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Just to echo some of the comments, I certainly appreciate all the work and efforts that everybody involved in the drafting of the master plan have put into to get to this point, and the vision that they're presenting for the community. There's certainly a lot of good initiatives and ideas within the plan, and it's good for us to focus and develop going forward. However, I did want to raise one issue, and I don't want to detract from all the good in the plan, but I just wanted to talk about the road diet that's proposed for Yonge Street in the downtown core. In the presentation that you presented, you talked about sort of the study process and doing some field investigations and desktop reviews and so forth. With respect to the road diet specifically, was there much investigation or evidence developed to support the concept?
David?
So sorry, through you to Dave.
David?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We didn't do a traffic analysis. However, a traffic analysis will be undertaken by the town, is my understanding, as part of the design project for the promenade through the downtown. And so I think the recommendation was that traffic analysis be extended out to sort of St. John's Side Road and beyond Church along Yonge Street, out beyond the promenade area. It's important to, even leaving aside the recommendation about the road diet or road rationalization, the promenade will require modifications on the approaching roadways so that traffic flows, especially through traffic, flows well, because with the improvements that are envisioned as part of that project, pending the outcome of the design, you'll have likely bay parking with enhanced treatment along the corridor and one lane in each direction. So that will require a little bit of modification on the approaches just to ensure that through traffic is flowing well. One of the solutions that I anticipate would be studied as part of that would be looking at reducing a portion of Yonge to the north down to 3 lanes with a 2-way center left turn lane, which actually the 2-way center left turn lane will really benefit businesses in terms of access to and from those properties compared to the current condition. I live in that area. I'm a regular visitor of some of the establishments along that corridor. But the traffic analysis will really demonstrate, based on the projections of existing traffic and future traffic, is that something that's reasonable? And if the outcome is that that lane capacity is required for future growth, then there are other options on the table for along that corridor. You may know there's a short section on the west side of Yonge north of the church that has an extra wide concrete boulevard sidewalk. It's actually almost wider than a multi-use pathway. So another option would be in the future, if that one option isn't going to work because of the traffic analysis, maybe there's an option to revisit having it in the boulevard. There was a lot of utilities and a bridge issue there at Orchard Heights that would require considerable design modifications in order to do that kind of facility type. But I think those options would be all assessed and identified as part of the analysis that would be informing the design of the promenade project. But staff may be able to provide more comment on that too.
Councillor?
Thank you. The reason I bring it up is that the concept has been talked about around this table for many years now, predating the development of this plan. And in the past, when I raised the concern, it's just for myself, I'm looking for more evidence, more details to corroborate that this is the right thing to do for us in our downtown core. When I go online and just search for myself to understand road diets and the implementation in other communities and stuff, there certainly is lots of positive results and information available for anybody that wants to do the research on their own. But there are also some cases where it didn't work out, where they've had to reverse it or it's created other issues. And so I just, I'm a little concerned when I see it being identified as a quick win to implement that program, that I don't know if collectively we've done enough due diligence to support the idea and made all of council and myself, fully aware of not just the benefits, but also any potential risks, because it absolutely could be the best and right thing to do. And I'm only speaking for myself. It's just that, I wish I had greater comfort in seeing the evidence or data to support that it's the right thing to do. Now, what I'm hearing from you is that there's still some more steps, and certainly I think the traffic analysis is a good part of that process, because since the idea was first put together, we've moved forward on Town Square, which we all believe will create a hub, a center of activity. There's been other developments with Amica and the church and so forth and things like so. I think all that stuff should be taken into consideration before council weighs into that one aspect. But like I said in the beginning, I don't want that to detract from the overall positivity of this master plan, the connectivity that's talking about through the cycling and the trails and the sidewalks. There's a tremendous amount of good within this. That's the one area I remain concerned about. And so for myself, I don't necessarily see that as an initiative as a quick win. I'd rather wait and see the development of, how the flow of traffic in downtown works once Town Square is open and some of the other development is finished, and then we could do a better assessment to make sure it's the right thing. But that's just one small little piece of an overall great plan. And so appreciate again all the work everybody's done and the vision that's been created. Thank you.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, David, for the great work you and the committee have done on this. The active transportation is defined as, any mode of transportation that's human powered. And it's been well known that when people are given the option to use those human modes of transportation, like biking or walking, they will use that mode of transportation. Now, I think one of the critical things that, policy can do in active transportation policy is to, ensure that that all modes of transportation safety is of the utmost concern, because if they don't feel safe, then they're not going to be using it, whether it's driving a car or walking or biking. And we need to treat active transportation. It's not simply a hobby or a form of luxury, but it's mandatory for everyone. So that said, what can we do? And I know you touch on some of that in the report, but what can we do in the future to kind of give residents that confidence that if there is a bike lane from Bayview Wellington all the way to G.W. Williams High School, that the parents feel confident that their kids can take the bike there instead of driving them, because majority of kids are driven to school. So through you, Mr. Mayor, from a safety perspective and getting the word out, it is safe. Like, what can we do to convince residents? Because that's going to be the one criteria that will get people to use active transportation.
David? Through the mayor, that's a great question. In the report, we talk about recommendations about safe routes to schools. Part of that is infrastructure. So a combination of implementing parts of the network that are on low low-speed roadways, or if they can't be, then there's a higher end infrastructure that ideally is buffered or physically separated from motor vehicle traffic is a great way of providing those connections. The ATAC committee also was quite vocal in making sure that there's a strategy in place to better accommodate kids walking and cycling to schools, and the recommendations in here for the town to work with the school boards to facilitate developing those types of plans around the various schools. But it's also, you know, an infrastructure issue in the terms of, you know, when roads are improved or rehabbed, or if there's a sidewalk that's missing, that those should be implemented. And we've tried our best in this master plan to identify those locations and areas to improve those investments. And a lot of them are in the 10-year plan. If you look at the 10-year phasing plan and you look at where the schools are, you'll notice that we are recommending infrastructure improvements in the location of many of those, especially all the high schools.
Councillor?
Thank you. And in reading some samples of active transportation plans in northern communities, you know, they talk about active transportation routes during the winter months. And, you know, I see a lot of these fat bikes all the time year round now. And you're seeing more of those in the winter months. I don't think I saw that in the plan, but is there something we can do to encourage active transportation in the winter?
David?
Through the mayor, you know, active transportation occurs year round. The vast majority of people are not as comfortable using cycling and trail infrastructure on their bikes during the winter. And part of it is because the challenge of maintaining the surface, you know, in a way that they're comfortable using. Some municipalities focus on developing spine networks where they try to have, similar to what they do with roadways, you know, clear those corridors as best as they can, and promote those for cycling for those who need it. And over time, you know, there are opportunities to enhance your maintenance strategy, but there's a cost. And with all municipalities, there's a balance of, you know, what percentage of people who are cycling during, you know, the spring, summer, fall are going to cycle to the winter. Where are they going? And, you know, how much is the investment for the municipality to maintain the entire network? Very often municipalities will do a survey of users, get a better understanding of, you know, when they bike and how often they bike and where they bike during different times of the year. And if certain routes were cleared during the winter, would they be more inclined in using some of those routes? So that could be something that could be considered in the future by the town. We didn't do that type of survey. We did ask some questions related to cycling use, and that information staff has that summarized in the master plan report. It was interesting that recommendations in terms of investment for improving trails and cycling infrastructure were by far the biggest recommendations from the public who provided input to the online survey. And you talked about fat bikes. One thing that didn't come up, and I thought it might, but e-bikes is growing at a very big rate. People of all ages. I'm 60. My wife and I have e-bikes now, and many of our neighbors in Aurora have e-bikes. That really changes the whole format and accessibility to an active transportation network in a town. E-bikes get you up hills a lot easier. You can go a lot further. You can carry your stuff. You don't have to worry about the extra weight on your bike or on your person. So e-bikes are really exploding. In fact, in Ontario, current stats indicate that they're outselling conventional bikes now. So municipalities across the country are looking at their active transportation networks and thinking very carefully about the infrastructure they have and how they can better accommodate that growing demand. We took that into account in developing this plan as well.
Councillor?
Great, thank you. And actually, that was my next question, but thank you for answering that. My last question through you, Mr. Mayor, is the National Agency talks about active transportation from a economic perspective as well as the health benefits. Was there any consideration in terms of adding the health benefits as part of the active transportation plan as well?
David?
The mayor, we do talk about the health benefits of active transportation as one of the criteria and one of the rationale for investing in AT, and is documented in the master plan report. We don't go into detail about what the specific benefits are. But, there is lots of information put out by Transport Canada that's been out over the last 10 or 15 years that clearly demonstrate that providing, the public with opportunities and infrastructure to be more active, regardless of whether they're, going to the corner store, going to the library, going to town park, deciding on a nice day to take their bike and then go to the GO station and hop on the GO train to go see something, assuming that their bike will be there when they get back is important. So we talk about bike parking as well. Those are all things that speak to, a really vibrant and healthy community. And Aurora is blessed. We have a GO station in the middle of town. How many towns have that? Not many. That's why I moved from downtown Toronto to Aurora, because that GO station was here in the middle of town. It was one of the driving forces. So that's a big deal. We just need to do a lot better job connecting to it.
Councillor?
Great, and thank you. And I was really pleased to see that there are key performance metrics, and you're going to keep council informed in terms of what was accomplished in each fiscal year. So thank you for that, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss, second time.
Thank you. Just one last question. If we look on 13 and 14 in your presentation, there's one isolated area in the town that really hasn't received an awful lot of information. Of course, that's the northwest section and along St. John's. And I know we have difficulties there with the regional road. But if you look at it, there's really no existing sidewalk network, and there's no existing trail and multi-use pathway network. And so I'm wondering if there's a reason why it's been orphaned like that, or if it's just a problem that you don't see being resolved in the next 20 years, because we're getting a lot more work on St. John's on the north side, particularly with that Shining Hill. And I think it deserves a little bit more attention than it has here. So I'm just wondering if I'm sure you've had those discussions, but could you fill us in with some of those discussions? It's in my ward, so I'd be remiss not to say something about it.
David?
So the development of that whole quadrant around, you're talking about around St. Anne's and that whole northwest, there's an extensive trail systems that is on the trail map in terms of improvements. There was a lot of discussion about St. John's Side Road, and the fact that it's a regional road and the need for York Region to, revisit and accelerate improving that roadway in a tighter time frame. And that was one of the comments that was also passed on at the ATAC committee that they attended. But that really should be a priority, and all they needed to do was go out and take a look at how that road is operating now with the school open to clearly understand that something needs to be done. And they did indicate to us that they realize now that they need to revisit that corridor sooner than initially planned. So we're hopeful that York Region will take a look at that corridor, and that whether it be sidewalks or multi-use pathway, that will be a decision on what the plans are for improving that corridor in the future. But in terms of north of there, the development plans already have an amazing extensive trail system that also connects right across to the future multi-use trail that will continue south from Newmarket along Yonge Street down to St. John's Side Road.
Residents will be happy to hear that. And the last thing, I guess, is the connectivity between the north side and the south side there. We're looking forward to getting a good pedestrian crossing there, because the people on the north side are interested in connecting with the people on the south side and the trail system that's there. So I hope there's some consideration of that. So thanks very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. David, thank you very much for all the work. I mean, obviously yourself and the committee have done, and I think that we're looking forward, I know, to everything that could be implemented and have some of those quick wins as well. I know you and I have had some discussions since, it's been a long time, about looking at implementing things to make our town more walkable, more pedestrian friendly, having more trails, more active transportation in our town. So I'm always excited when I see such a well-written, well-drafted master plan that has been developed by many people. So I appreciate the work. And thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing what we can build within the town. All vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Member motions, 15.1, Councillor Gilliland. even though Councillor Gardner pulled it, I will ask if you'd like to move it. Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Kim. Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I know the motion is very, I don't want to say complicated, but there's a lot there to unpack. This is a motion that I had been working on for at least almost a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And it really did begin with attending a workshop on infrastructure, smart technologies, and so forth, and how we evolve and ebb and flow as we are introduced with these types of new technologies. And I know that the federal government also had introduced Smart Cities Challenge in 2017 and asked other municipalities to partake in that. And I know Mississauga was one of the municipalities that kind of led the charge on that. And since then, a lot of things have shifted. A lot of things have changed. Obviously, we are being introduced to a lot of different technology. And with that, there's also a lot of concerns. And that concerns really is about data and data privacy and the consent around that. It's one thing to have a data privacy policy, but it's another when we are talking about the usage of that data and how third parties may use that data, and obviously the trust of the public with that data. And it has been recommended, I've read some articles also in the last, I would say, 6 weeks, that the federal government, provincial governments, and so forth are also looking at ways to improve the privacy laws to this as well. But I have also done research to find that there's what they call data charters, and it's a great example of introducing legislation or a charter of sorts that really gives the municipality a guide of almost an oath of how we utilize this type of information and how we intend to use it and how we intend to protect the public. I just want to pop up some examples here. Montreal, they had also have done a data charter, and this was one of the inspirations that I was inspired by. And essentially, it's to ensure the ethical and responsible collection, management, and use of data in the urban space. So as we ebb and flow and change, obviously we have Town Square, and there's going to be some new technologies that'll be introduced and maybe some other infrastructure. I think it's very mindful of us to ensure that we have some sort of governance around that. Within these charters, it's really interesting. The main focuses of their principled focus is protecting human rights in the digital era and also promoting the general interest of the common good of the community and building a brighter future together through data. So I do believe there's a lot of pros to this because it does really outline some accountability to how data is used. And we did have some people who did come to council not too long ago and express some concerns about that. And I believe this is a good first step in looking at the feasibility of developing this type of a framework as a data charter centered around human rights and privacy. The privacy enhancing technologies is the term that was utilized by some of the tech industries, which just essentially means that it's something, some technologies are over and above the security of the new technology that is being introduced and ensure it's used ethically. Some of the conversations I had with staff and the challenges is that we don't know what all this technology is. So it's really hard to write a policy around technology. We don't know it exists, but what we can do is develop a charter of sorts and have this governance around that. And so we have those protections in place prior to having a technology and saying, oops, sorry, we didn't really address that properly. So this is just something to be very proactive about. And the second part of this as well is that, as we are being introduced with something that's new and unforeseen within our town, that, council does have an inside look of what that means and the effect in the community, if that is something we want to invest in versus installing some sort of system that might be tracking in a way that we don't feel is appropriate. When I'm being specific when it comes to images and recording and how third parties, stakeholders are handling that information, if that's something that we want to partake in. I think it's a very serious conversation that we have to have. And I just put that in there because I think it kind of leaves the door open for that conversation for council to be aware of any of this new technology comes in. So this is the point of the motion. I hope I have some support. I hope this is very proactive in trying to have some sort of new charter that will guide us in a direction that will ensure that there's some public trust on how data is being used as new technology is being introduced.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for stopping at 5. Appreciate that. Thank you for stopping at 5. I appreciate that. No, it's fine. I just went to that point before I move on. Ask if there are any other questions. Just to let everyone know, because this is the first committee of the whole, and our procedural bylaw does not have committee of the whole on it, because it wasn't passed. I will be holding everyone to 5 and 5 minutes until at such time that our procedural bylaw aligns with what we would like to see on this committee of the whole. So, any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo.
So just to that point, would we normally have 10 minutes?
Normally we would, but our procedural bylaw does not speak to this committee of the whole, so it's the chair's ruling on how long we could speak. 5 and 5 until the procedural bylaw aligns with a committee of the whole. As I was going to, and I don't want to bring this up because we're talking about the motion, but also member motions will not be considered moving forward until our procedural bylaw speaks to member motions at committee of the whole. Because right now it does not. Councillor Gallo, to the motion.
Off the discussion in new business, I guess. But well, actually, in terms of speaking now, if that's your ruling, until we get some guidance around there, I think we should stick to the general committee rule guidelines of 10 minutes. And if it's a ruling, I challenge that ruling, Mr. Mayor.
Clerk, chair's decision.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's procedure bylaw. So until that, it is the chair, but that doesn't preclude the council from challenging the chair.
Which is what I did. I think we should stick to the 10 minutes until such time as something changes. These are kind of deemed to be general committee.
I hear you, Councillor, and I'll call the vote on the challenge. But as clerk just mentioned, procedural bylaw is silent, because we essentially don't have a procedural bylaw that aligns with us and what we're doing. Call the vote. Challenge of the chair. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Go ahead, Councillor Gallagher, to the motion.
Thank you. I'll be in support of this. The first one, looking for staff to report back with the feasibility of developing a digital governance framework. Looking forward to seeing that. The second one is just that last and third-party stakeholders that I'm not connecting with the rest of that sentence. It's asking to report back, staff report back to council for a direction prior to investing. I'm not sure what kind of direction we're looking for, but direction prior to investing, installing, integrating technologies. That's fine. That collects or retains personal data, including images, recordings. That's fine. And then it says, and third-party stakeholders. I think there's something missing there in terms of explaining what is meant by third-party stakeholders. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gilliland.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I had worked on this with the CAO, and it was the understanding of just when third parties are handling, if we contract out, say, for instance, an app of sorts to handle information, they would be considered a third party that we have procured, and we should include that in our consideration prior to investing in that, how they handle our data.
Councillor.
Okay, it's not clear to me, perhaps at the end of that, and third-party stakeholders, something to do with how they collect their data, but I guess I'll leave it up to staff to interpret it.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the concept of developing a digital data charter and look forward to get a report back to discuss it in broader contexts. I know the federal government through C-27 is doing something. I don't know how similar it is. I'm not overly familiar with it, other than it's referred to as the Digital Charter Implementation Act. So there might be some value in exploring what they're doing as well, in addition to some of the municipalities that Councillor Gilliland had mentioned for when the staff report comes back. But I'm having a challenge with the second clause, because the way it reads to me is that even though council may have approved through the capital budget process, software, IT strategies, and so forth, the way this reads to me is that before staff can implement, so let's say, a change in process, that maybe they go to an online billing system, that they got to report back to council for direction on whether or not to move forward with that technology, to install it, to utilize it. And so if that's the intent, I'm not comfortable at this point in time. I'd rather get staff to weigh in on how they perceive this second clause and whether or not it could be construed as limiting or curtailing their ability to implement some of the initiatives that they've identified through their own business process. So I'm not sure who the best staff person is to answer that, whether it would be our CAO, our solicitor, or Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel. So through the chair.
Thank you. Sale.
Through Mr. Mayor. So as Councillor Gilliland pointed out, this was wording that we were trying to boil down the original draft of this motion and make it a little clearer. That said, certainly we would have to give a lot of thought to how this slows down process, because you're right, according to, on a word by word understanding of it, then anytime we're going to bring any new technology that includes retaining data, we would have to bring a report to council and seek their concurrence.
Councillor.
Thank you. So I guess, subject to what Councillor Gilliland will have to say about it, I'm supportive of the first clause, but at this point, I'm not supportive of the second clause until I get a better understanding, and maybe I'll have further conversations with staff or hear something tonight about it. But I think that if council develops a policy and a charter and approves capital projects, then that's the appropriate time to have discussions, but not necessarily through this business process, micromanaging some of those little things.
Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just kind of want to speak to that, and fair enough. It's a fair question. It really is. And I really struggled with that second clause and how to word it. And I've been back and forth a few times. The intent really is, if we were to invest in, say, new lights, but these lights were going to have the ability to sense human activity that could go far beyond. Do we want to know about this new technology? Yes, I want to know about this new technology. Is this something we want to do? I'm not trying to put a hold on, a billing system or anything that is, things we already have in place that are not as invasive. I'm really looking at something that's something brand new. People might be concerned about, say, facial recognition. People want to ensure that, that they have consent and there's privacy around that. And as a councillor, I would want to know that if there was a new technology that was going to capture a facial recognition, I want to know about it. How I communicate that in that second clause is up for debate. I know, Mr. CEO, we had this conversation and I was pretty clear I wasn't trying to micromanage that. So I'm open to changing that language that would make sense for staff to understand and for my fellow councillors. But ultimately, it's more or less trying to put some level of protection up to know that we're not investing in something new that we don't know without understanding the full capabilities of this new smart technology that could be in our town. So I don't know, through you, Mr. CEO, to Mr. Serio, what you think, or Mr. CEO, if you have other suggestions. I am very open to rephrasing that clause that makes sense. And I think you get a general idea of where I'm going. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. CEO.
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess we could say integrating technology that collects personal images and recordings.
Mr. CEO, can I interrupt?
Absolutely.
Councillor, how about we do have 3 weeks? between now and council.
Yep.
How about, and I'm sure you just want to get a vote, but how about as we do in other instances, we just receive this and when we get to the third week back at council, then you can put something that has been worked through. How's that?
I mean,
Instead of sitting here
Yep,
right now
sure.
and just wordsmithing it, and I'm sure we'll figure out something that everyone is agreeable upon come 3 weeks from now.
sure, we
Okay.
could definitely do that.
Okay, you moved it, Councillor Kim seconded. Are we okay just to receive it at this point? And then we'll look at
Yeah,
putting something on the floor at council.
we could definitely do that. And hopefully, Mr. CO, between now and then, you can help me wordsmith that properly. I think that's what I was trying to.
Or hold on, because I got the clerk kind of looking at me, or would you rather have me refer this to council or table it and tell council? If we're all in agreement to the first clause, which is to pass the first clause right now, and then we can look at doing something for a second clause, adding it on.
Okay, let's do that.
From council. How about we do that?
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
we're just gonna do the first clause for today. And then 3 weeks from now, we'll look at, Councilor Gilliland will work with staff to come back with something to actually, to look at the possibility of adding a second clause. Okay? Is everyone good with that? Councilor Kim, you good with that? Okay, so we're gonna remove the second clause. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Regional highlights. Councilor Gardner, you pulled these. Will you move them? There are. Would you like to move? Thank you. It's to receive. Seconder. Councilor Gallo. Any comments or questions on the regional highlights? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Oh, I got new business. Oh, sorry, I was quick there. New business, Councilor Kim. Councilor Gallo.
Thank you. I just wanted to have a further discussion on, it was your ruling about members' motions not being on, what's this meeting called? Committee of the Whole. If that is your ruling, I would also like to challenge that for the reasons explained in my motion that brought it to general committee when we did do that.
So Councilor, and thank you, and I appreciate, and we can have this discussion. I was going to send you all an email in regards to this. I was thinking about possibly saying something at the beginning of the meeting, but we got to this point, and I'm very, very open to have this discussion right now. Our procedural bylaw is silent when it comes to committee of the whole. If you want to challenge it, that's fine, but that just means that every time there's a motion that comes here, I will rule it out of order as far as it doesn't say it within our procedural bylaw, and you'll have to challenge me every time. And that's fine. We're going to do that. But my point is until the procedural bylaw aligns with what we're doing here or speaks to what we should be doing here, well, then it's the chair's ruling on how we move forward. So I would really hope that the procedural bylaw is modified to align with legislation and align with what we are doing and moving forward in as far as from a meeting structure, and we can all move forward appropriately, and there would be no need for challenges.
That's obviously up to you, and you're
Absolutely.
right to do that. It's my viewpoint that it should be the will of council that makes those decisions, and the challenge will allow everyone to vote. And if the will of council is not to agree with me, then so be it, and off we go. These two that I brought up are simply in a continuation of what we did in the past at general committee. And to me, this is a general committee discussion because we're not making any decisions. And it's absolutely not swaying from
Council. I'm just going to stop it. General committee doesn't exist. So there is no general committee.
What we did in general committee.
I agree, but procedural bylaw does not speak to committee of the whole. That is what we are at today.
I'll challenge you. Yeah.
That's fine.
Which means that clerk would have to put members' motions on the next agenda if it comes up.
Okay.
That's it. Put it to a vote.
Oh, no, it will go on the agenda and then I'll just say I'm removing it. Once it's here, then you can challenge it at that point. There is no vote to have right now.
Well, sorry, my understanding was that you were going to change that so that it wouldn't be on a committee of a whole agenda. It would end up on a council agenda, and that's what I'm trying to avoid.
We need a procedural bylaw to state that. Yes, we need procedural bylaw to state that member motions need to be on the committee of whole agenda. We need a procedural bylaw to state that.
You've changed it to say it wouldn't.
Because
it can't work both ways.
No, but there is nothing in the procedural, Councillor, there's nothing in the procedural bylaw that speaks to committee of the whole. I'm hopeful that council will make that adjustment and therefore there will be no issue.
Someone made a decision to put it on this one.
It's because the procedural bylaw came after this agenda was approved. And so therefore, I felt it was not appropriate to remove it after council denied the procedural bylaw from aligning with committee of the whole. That is why it's still here. Otherwise, it would not have been here.
No interest in going back and forth. I'm challenging the ruling that it won't end up on committee of the whole.
But there's no ruling here. This motion's here. There's nothing to.
You had said that in the future they won't end up on the committee of a whole.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to address.
Yeah.
Those were your words.
Yes.
Was your ruling.
Yes. You
just
can
like the
challenge
5
me.
minutes.
You can challenge me at the next meeting
As
when
long as
the member motion
no,
is not there, and you can challenge me at that time. There's nothing to challenge at this point.
Through you to Mr. Clerk, how did this end up on this agenda?
Mr.
If
Clerk,
there's no procedural, if there's no procedural bylaw that allows it now, what's changed between now and the next meeting?
I did explain it, but I'll let the clerk explain it as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when creating this agenda, the first committee of the whole agenda, we attempted to, with a procedure bylaw that does not reflect how council currently does its business, we sort of just did a continuation. A literal reading of the procedure bylaw, I would agree that it doesn't say anything about committee of the whole and motions. So I can see from both sides in this case. As staff, trying to remain neutral and carry on, but that is sort of what our thinking was.
Councillor? I mean, all that needs to be done is an amendment to the procedural bylaw to have no member motions on committee of the whole agendas. That's all that's needed. If you'd like to put that forward, take a second.
No, I'm challenging the inaccuracy of what we're doing now versus what's going to happen next week.
You can challenge me next week.
As long
Nothing's
as
happened.
As long as they're on the agenda, just like now.
You can challenge me next.
As long as it's on the agenda, no problem.
Challenge me next time.
No, if it's not on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, it would require a 2/3 majority vote to put it on the agenda. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Would it not?
Councillor, there's no motion to be put forward right now. There's no challenge to be put forward right
We're talking about any future ones. We can't predict the future. I'm trying to establish a process. You're changing the process, and maybe you have every right to do that, just as I have a right to challenge that. Your decision, just like the 5 minutes went to 10 minutes, back to 10 minutes.
now. And Councillor, and just sort of from a procedural standpoint, I can stop everyone every 5 minutes, and you would have to challenge me every single time.
That's up to you. Yeah.
No, that's up to you.
No, that's up to you to do that.
I'm following.
I won't stop you from not doing it.
Councillor, I'm not going to get into a debate. I'm following our procedural bylaw, which is sound.
Great. Let's be consistent. Have it on the next agenda, and you can take it off at that point if you like.
Okay. Councillor Thompson. To this or a new business?
I'll call it new business then. And, I'd like to ask for a reconsideration that the amended procedural bylaw that was on the agenda last Tuesday that spoke to changing GC to committee of the whole be reintroduced. And it can be subject to a 2/3 vote. And if council doesn't want to address it, because the clerk did make those changes, council last Tuesday chose not to adopt those changes for whatever reason. And so if it helps move us forward by changing our procedural bylaw where it's a committee, general committee to committee of the whole and makes things better, then let's do that. So I will ask for that item to be reconsidered.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Kim,
2/3.
2/3. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Fails? That's
it.
Yeah. Councillor Gunner. New business.
I sent Mr. Muno a message on Teams earlier. I don't know if you had a chance to read it because you had a very busy day. The question is, when the Highland development was discussed at council, a fenced dog run was agreed to. Did this make it into the agreement?
Mr. Romano,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have to look into that. I can't
Thank you.
remember. The fence dog run within the future park.
Yes.
Councillor.
Thank you. The other thing is, I think a lot of residents use trails to walk their dogs. And many of them are very respectful and they pick up the dog waste and they put it into little bags. But what's been happening, especially on the trail near Elizabeth Hayter Park and on Cleese Crescent, the beginning or the end of the trail, however you look at it, people have been throwing their little bags into the trees because there are no garbage receptacles. And it looks terrible. It's probably won't be very much fun in the summer if it starts to smell. And so I don't know who would address this, perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Dean Campbell. I'm sorry, I should have spoken to you earlier. I didn't think of it, but residents are always wanting more garbage cans. But, and we don't have a lot on our trails, but if residents are going to throw this into the bushes, I think we need to do something about it. So.
Ms. Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of our dog waste receptacle in ground system, we are placing additional receptacles over the next 3 years on our trail system. That being said, they need to be in areas where they can be collected by a piece of equipment because they are large in-ground units, as you know. So there's not the ability to put them actually within the trail system. So we look to residents to be responsible to carry it to those entrances where we will have accessibility areas for proper disposal.
Councillor.
Yes, I hear those, I don't know, the towers are very successful at the dog park. You know, I can't explain why residents are not carrying their dog waste to the end of the trail or home, but it is a problem, and maybe maybe somebody could look into it because it is unsightly. And residents are doing it, whether they should or not. So I'll just leave it with you. Thank you.
Anything else? Councillor Gilliland, new business?
Thank you. Before I bring it up, I just want to confer with Councillor Weiss about the Royal Canadian Air Force. Did you have intentions of speaking about that? It's already done? Okay. Are you gonna make an announcement to the public? Okay, I'm gonna leave that to you. I just don't want you to forget. So I'm gonna leave that. I guess the only thing I really request through you to Mr. Mayor is I noticed that there's been some statements released by you, and I know there's been I guess with all this new structure and strong mayor powers, there's a lot more I guess statements and decisions, and I know that the mayoral decisions are posted online. So just as a member of council, I'm requesting that if you would be able to email all council your statements. So at the same time when you release them, so at least we're in the know, because often we'll discover them on social media just by stumbling upon them. And it would just be nice if council was notified prior to the release. So at least we had an idea of what's being said out there and communicated. So if anybody has any questions, at least we can say we're aware. That's just my request to you. And hopefully that's something you'll be able to provide for council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Councillor Reese, new business? Public service announcement? Go ahead.
Stated before, I was contacted by people for the RCAF, and of course, they're doing their 100th anniversary, and the date of the start of that or the celebration is on April the 1st. And I asked the clerk about a proclamation, and he said the proclamation's already in place right now. So I want to thank you and the clerk for doing that. You'll see here Capes for Kids. We're in Capes for Kids Week, March 1st to the 8th. So that fundraiser is winding up, and I was just looking because I stay in touch with Allison Hughes from Holland Blue Review, and they're getting close to having a very good fundraising effort this year. The last I heard was over $650,000, not from this community, but better than last year. So I want to thank everybody who's pitched in and helped with the fundraising campaign, and you still have 4 more days to make your donation, and you can go at capesforkids.ca /Aurora, and you can top it up. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland, public service announcement.
Yep, thank you. I'm just searching something here. 1 second. So I had closed it and I cannot find it now. Thought you heard me speak to it. I just wanted to mention on the blue light that there's over a dozen countries worldwide that is participating in this celebration. It is April 1st, and the challenge is for everybody to cast a blue light in their house. You can purchase a blue bulb or some sort of blue shield or something or other. This is something that's going to be measured on the Guinness World Book of Records, and it would be really great if Aurora could also participate in that challenge. Maybe even town hall. Maybe there's some areas in town hall we can cast that blue light as well. Councillor Reese, I'm sure maybe you could speak to it at council again to remind everybody, but I wanted to ensure, I think it's a pretty remarkable thing that is being done around the world and recognized. So it's pretty special. And I also understand that the Royal Canadian Force will be also doing an Air Force show at Blue Mountain on the 2nd. So I think that's pretty cool. I did want to let the public know that there is a free skate on Sunday, March the 10th from 11 to 2:30 at the Aurora Community Center. I know it's unfortunate that we don't have any outdoor rinks because of this weather, but get your last skate in perhaps right at the start of March break. Again, March 10th, Sunday from 11 to 12:30. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, public service. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Powell, Councillor Kim. Okay, actually, Councillor Gilliland, you're right. Good thing. We don't have that outdoor rink, but good thing it's in the budget, and I'm looking forward to getting that report back. And Councillor Gallo, thank you very much for making sure that that was in the budget. So I'm looking forward to when that rink, hopefully, council approves it and we put it up and it's good to go. Wristbands are on sale for our annual Hello Spring event. Kids can explore spring-themed outdoor and interactive activities and even have a photo taken with the Easter Bunny. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. Wristbands are $5 per person and are available for purchase at select town facilities, and more details are available at aurora.ca/hellospring. Nominations are open for our annual Community Recognition Awards. It's one of my favorite events. I think it's all of council's favorite event, where we get to celebrate the incredible contributions that people in our community make. So if anyone knows an individual, group, or business in town who's going above and beyond to help strengthen Aurora, please take a moment and nominate them today at aurora.ca/CRA. Aurora's Youth Innovation Fair is back this coming May after a brief hiatus due to the pandemic. And so if you know a student in grades 4 to 12 with a brilliant idea, registrations are now open for more information, and you can visit aurora.ca/youth-innovation. Also, the town of Aurora is creating a community reflection space for the purpose of bringing people together when faced with tragic histories and current events. We want, obviously, all of our residents' feedback regarding the ideal location and important amenities to include. So to put your comments in, please visit engageaurora.ca/reflection space. And as we all know, March break is almost here. So I think on behalf of town council, I want to wish all students and the many parents an awesome week off. And if you're planning a staycation, you'll want to check out, we have many great day camps, drop-in programs and other activities that the town has going on. If you want to see any of those activities, you can visit aurora.ca and you can check out everything that's going on so you can participate and have a fun time during March break right here in town. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner, all those in favor?